commandment, tithe to be particular. The tithing commandment and the new covenant. What scripture actually teaches about giving on the law and Christian freedom? Giving a tithe is perfectly acceptable and honoring to God. The first fruits principle is genuine and carries forward. Supporting your pastor in your local church is absolutely biblical. Nobody is arguing against generosity. However, the New Testament nowhere commands, implies, or establishes a mandatory tithe as a legal obligation on New Covenant believers. Not once. Not in any epistles, not in any apostolic instruction to the church. This study proves that from Scripture itself. Section 1, Matthew 23:23. What was actually happening? This is the verse most commonly cited to prove Jesus was tithing as a new covenant principle. Let's look at it carefully. Matthew 23:23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye have to have done, and not to leave the other undone. Okay? Who is Jesus talking to? Scribes and Pharisees, Jewish leaders fully under the Mosaic covenant. People for whom the tithing commandment was absolutely still in effect. The cross had not happened. The new covenant had not been yet inaugurated. He was not establishing tithing as a new covenant principle. He was rebuking their hypocrisy. They were meticulous about minor tithes while completely neglecting justice, mercy, and faith. The point of the verse is not about tithing at all. The point is about a misplaced priorities and a wrong heart. Key observation. Jesus ministered under the law. Galatians 4:4 says he was born under the law to redeem them that were under the law. Everything he said before the cross was spoken to people still operating under the Mosaic system. You cannot take pre-cross statements made to people under the law and apply them as direct covenant commands without a serious hermeneutical problem. Section 2. The tithing command was tied directly to Levi. The tithing commandment was never a free-floating eternal principle. It was structurally and inseparably connected to the Levitical priesthood, Hebrews 7:5. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi, who receive the office of the priesthood, have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law. The commandment belonged to Levi specifically, not to all people at all times. It was according to the law, not above the law, not before the law in its commanded form. It was inseparable from the office of the priesthood. For the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. Critical point. The word necessity here is not casual. It means the change was automatic, logical, and unavoidable. When the Levitical priesthood was superseded by Christ's priesthood, the tithing commandment tied to it was necessarily and simultaneously changed with it. Hebrews 7:18. For there is verily a disannulling of the commandment going before the weakness and unprofitableness thereof. Disannulled is strong legal language. Abolish, set aside, render, void. This is not ambiguous language. The writer of Hebrews states plainly that the commandment has been disannulled. This includes the tithing commandment embedded within the Levitical system. Section 3. What Hebrews 7 actually argues, the irony. Many use Hebrews 7 to argue that tithing continues because Jesus is a priest after Melchizedek's order. But the argument of the passage runs in the opposite direction. The writer's real argument, even Abraham, the greatest patriarch, acknowledged Melchizedek's superiority by paying him a tithe. Even Levi, the source of Israel's priesthood and tithing system, paid tithes to Melchizedek through Abraham. Therefore, the Melchizedek order is superior to the Levitical order. Jesus is a priest after the Melchizedek order. Therefore, the Levitical priesthood and its commandments, including tithing by the commandment, this means by the commandment tithing, are superseded and disannulled. The irony, the passage uses Abraham's tithes as evidence of the Levitical system was always subordinate. And therefore, it is disannulling is justified. It's disannulling is justified. It's not saying tithing continues by the law, of course, is what it's saying. It is using tithing as proof that the system demanded it was always inferior. The book of Hebrews was written to Jewish believers who were tempted to revert to the Mosaic system. It was probably the Pharisees and Sadducees, a lot of them that came out of that time frame with Jesus Christ, that they became converted. The entire arguments of chapter 7 through 10 is don't go back. The old system was a shadow. Christ is a substance. The old is obsolete. The Levitical tithing method is history, baby. Hebrews 8:13. In that he saith, a new covenant he hath made the first old, now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. Hebrews 10:1. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers thereunto perfect. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law. This is the heart of what the scripture establishes about the relationship to the law, including the tithing commandment. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is every one that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. There's a lot to be said for that. The three tithes that people seem to somehow only take one and bypass the other two. But let's move forward. A critical problem with selective application. Paul's argument here is absolute. Absolute. If you place yourself under the law, you must keep all of it, not selected portions. Failure to keep any part brings the curse. You cannot carry forward one commandment while dismissing others without placing people under obligation they cannot fully keep, which Paul says brings a curse, not a blessing. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, the tithing commandment, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. Christ did not merely fulfill the law, he specifically redeemed us from its curse. This means that Malachi 3:9, cursed, ye are cursed with the curse, cannot legitimately be preached over new covenant believers as consequences of not tithing. That curse is precisely what Christ bore on the cross. Now, I kind of agree and I disagree with that in a way, but that's for another Bible study. There is a way to fulfill that curse, and it's in a different form. It's the condition of the heart, like Annas and Sapphira. That was the curse. And I think we can all agree to that. That there's not really necessarily a curse of percentage anymore. It's just a condition of your heart and what you do with your first fruit and your life in general. Not a percentage, but that's further in the study. Colossians 2:14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which is contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. Let no man, Colossians 2:16, therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Paul is direct. Let no man judge you for not keeping legal ordinances. The tithing commandment falls squarely within this category. Galatians 5:1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty which Christ has made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Acts 15:10, Peter at the Jerusalem Council. Now, therefore, why tempt ye God to put a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? Section 5, the New Testament standard for giving. The New Testament is not silent on giving. It has a great deal to say. It simply never says a mandatory 10%. 2 Corinthians 9:7, every man according to his purpose in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly, nor of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Every man, individual and personal, not institutionally mandated, as he purposes in his heart, eternally motivated, internally motivated, not externally commanded, not of necessity, given under legal compulsion, is explicitly what Paul says not to do, a complete contradictory of the scripture. Cheerful, the opposite of guilt-driven compliance. 2 Corinthians 8:3-4, the Macedonians, for to their power I bear record, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift. The Macedonians gave beyond their ability, voluntarily, even begging Paul to let them give. This is a far higher standard than a legal percentage, and it was entirely spirit motivated. It was a move of the spirit, and it was motivated from the love of Christ. That they wanted to have a burden to give to a certain situation, cause. 2 Corinthians 8:12. For if there be willing in mind, it is accepted according to that a man hath, and not according to the man hath not. God's measure is willingness and proportion to ability, not a fixed percentage, regardless of the circumstance. This is fundamentally incompatible with a mandatory 10% commandment. Significant silence. Paul had multiple direct opportunities to invoke the tithing commandment when teaching on giving, especially in 2 Corinthians 8 and 9. Two full chapters dedicated entirely to the subject. He never once mentioned it. The silence is not accidental, it's instructive. Section 6, the biblical narrative and sequence. When you lay the scriptures out in their proper order, the story tells itself clearly. Matthew 23:23, Jesus affirms tithing, speaking to the Pharisees who are under the Mosaic law before the cross, before the new covenant. And on that note, do you really think that he was really trying to give the Pharisees a pat on the back? He's probably telling them, you guys got these big old hogs, and these, not hogs, but the big old, eat hogs, but big old, who knows? Maybe they were hiding hogs, but maybe they had big old sheep and big old cattle and all kinds of stuff hidden that they weren't giving tithes on. Maybe Jesus was confronting them about that portion of their life instead of the little tiny herbs and these little things they could grow out in the front of their garden. I mean, come on, think about it. It doesn't make sense. The cross. Christ has made a curse for us, redeeming us from the curse of the law. The handwriting of ordinances is nailed to the cross. Galatians 3:13, Colossians 2:14. Hebrews 7:18, written to a Jewish believers tempted to revert to the law, explicitly stating the commandment is disannulled along with the Levitical priesthood it was tied to. I mean, I don't know how much more clear you can be unless I'm not seeing that read correctly, but it totally looks like it's just saying the Levitical tithe of the commandment is disannulled. That's gone. Galatians 5:1, stand fast in the liberty of Christ. Do not be entangled again with the yoke of legal bondage. 2 Corinthians 9:7, the new covenant standard for giving, purposeful, cheerful, voluntarily, proportional, not of necessity, not of commandment.